Hey everybody, welcome back to the Guitar Slinger Hockey channel. I have a bit of a different video for you guys today about hockey boot stiffness. And I decided to start this video out today with the lame graphic that says the word hype with a red slash through it because I kind of feel like boot stiffness and hype has been kind of a thing for the last couple of years. And I wanted to do this video and make this video because I happen to be an unwilling uh, in an unwilling position to be able to speak to it because of the problems that I've had getting myself into a pair of skates that fit me. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that it's been damn near impossible to get me into not only a retail boot, but also a custom boot, custom hockey boot. And you know, that's just partially the anatomy of my foot, but it's also partially how manufacturers are making skates too, is what I'm finding out. And so I first noticed the stiffness of hockey skates in 2016. And in 2016, and by the way, current time is, or day is February of 2021. At that time, I moved from the Bauer APX2 Vapor skates to the Ccm Supertacs in 2016. And that Supertac was the very first time CCM offered a one-piece boot. And I remember very vividly feeling like, okay, these are some pretty stiff skates, but getting them on the ice, I was like, oh man, these things are way more responsive than those Bowers that I had. And so that was kind of my first memory of not only the stiffness aspect, but also the one-piece boot and kind of what that did. And so, you know, kind of thinking about this and looking back in time, and I also thought that I might be a good person to speak to this because of my skating ability as well as my weight. And so, you know, I am 215 pounds. So I bring that up because it should be enough weight to flex the boot, you know, no matter how stiff a skate is. I'm primarily an official, but I have played hockey for a really long time. And even though I've played hockey for a really long time and played up, you know, past youth hockey into college, I'm still not really, I was never really formally trained in skating and power skating and hockey. And yes, I've taken, you know, power skating classes and all that good stuff and been coached, but not really at the level of, you know, I think a lot of you folks that maybe were watching this. But where I have had a lot of formal training as an official, and I am currently working, you know, pandemic excluded, currently working at a high level of hockey, you know, juniors and college and things like that. So, you know, I am comfortable in speaking to the performance of top model and custom skates because I have either tried them all or owned them all, unfortunately. So I feel like I do have a little bit of a leg to stand on to speak to some of this stuff. And I think that if you are somebody that's watching this and trying to understand the value of a stiff boot, or maybe you've never even thought about it before, and you're thinking about purchasing a high-end skate, whether it be the top-end one or one down from the top end, like second level, or thinking going custom, I hope this video should provide a little bit of insight for you on what to expect. So what I will include in this video is, it's mostly going to be my opinion, but I think it's pretty well founded in reality from what I've, you know, experienced by A-Bing these top-end skates next to each other. And so basically one of the things that I've noticed, if we go back to the stiffness of a boot, the marketing that I personally hear about the stiffness of the boot is that you get the most energy transfer, the responsiveness, and that's great. And I do think that you will get that, especially in CCM one-piece boots. But then there's other aspects of stiffness that we see from Bauer and also the CCM Ribcore line of skates that's stiff, but it's a different type of stiff. And what I mean by that is, when you have a one-piece boot like a Ccm Supertac or an Ft2 Jet Speed, you have the whole thing is just rigid. And with a ribcore skate, at least the current model, you have a stiff, it's kind of stiff near your foot, but it gets softer as you go up the boot. And the same would be said about the Bauer ultrasonic skate. And to a certain extent, that's true with the Bauer 2X Pro Vapor skate. And then when you get into skates like True, you have a skate that is also very rigid in a similar fashion as a Supertac or a Jet Speed line of skates. So, you have to think about that is a good thing to have stiffness, but it's got to be the right stiffness for you specifically. And I would liken this stuff to a hockey stick flex. By the way that boot stiffness is marketed to hockey players, it would be like saying that, okay, well, we have an adult hockey player who is, I don't know, 5'9", 200 pounds. That person should be using a 100 flex stick. And then you're like, okay, well, I can kind of see why that person would be using that. It's 100 flex is half the weight of a 200-pound player. But then you also now have a 6-foot-tall 14-year-old who weighs, 140 pounds should also use a 100 flex stick. Well, maybe, but no, not necessarily. Maybe that player isn't strong enough yet. Maybe that player isn't quite ready to move up in stiffness. Maybe that player needs a 70 flex or a 75. But by the marketing, it says, nope, 100 flex. Or even worse, 105 flex or whatever. So they basically are saying that no matter what your weight is, your skating level, they're saying that stiffer is better. Even though they may not, the associate fitting you at the store may suggest something different for you, the marketing tells you that a stiffer boot is better. And so here is my perspective on what will happen if you have a boot that's too stiff or a boot that's too soft. So I have currently, I'm going to rattle off the skates that I have spent a fair amount of time in that you guys will know. So I have owned the Ccm As3 Pro Supertac. My wife owns the Ft2 Jet Speed. I currently own I will refer to as a bootleg Ccm Ribcore Matrix, Titanium, which is like a mismatch of ribcore parts back in the day when the 70K was the top end model. That's my backup pair of skates. I have a completely custom pair of Bauer Ultrasonics. I have had a custom pair of Bauer 2X Pro Vapors, retail pair of 2X Pro Vapors. Have had 2 pairs of custom True skates. I have owned custom Ccm AS1s. I have owned the retail Ccm Supertac from 2016. And, before that, it's pretty much irrelevant, but there were some pairs of Graphs in there and some older Bauer Vapor APX2s, like I mentioned earlier. So I have now worn all that stuff and played games in them. I've refed in them, except for the FT2s because I don't fit in those, even though I have tried to jam my foot in there and get a feel for the stiffness. And so what I've noticed from at least the pairs of skates that I've used personally is that when I had that first pair of Supertacs in 2016, I mentioned earlier in the video that I had I could notice the stiffness. And what I meant by that is that was the first point in time where I started to feel ankle bone pressure. So the inside pointy parts of my ankle bone, I started to feel pressure when I would bend my knees over the toes and cut hard and basically do backwards crossovers. The boots were basically not flexing There was a little bit of a volume issue in those skates for me too, so I can't say it's 100% a flex, a boot stiffness aspect, but the boots were definitely not flexing much, and I felt a lot of pressure and pain to the point where I had to buy these gel bunga pads to use over my ankle bones. And that did resolve the issue, but it was the first time I'd ever experienced something like that. And then you fast forward to 2018 when I decided to make the leap from retail to custom. And by the way, that ankle bone issue is why I leapt from retail to custom. And I ordered a pair of AS1 Ccm Supertacs. And even though it did take CCM 3 tries to get the skates to fit me correctly, the third pair of skates did fit me. And the issue with those skates, I did not skate in those very long because the very top of the eyelets on the Supertacs of the AS1s, every time I cut in those, that boot was even stiffer, and I'm sure it was the stiffness on those because it would dig in to the top front of my ankle and cause this electrical shock type of feeling that was, basically radiating down my foot. And whenever you start feeling numbness and tingling, electrical shocks because of your skates, you are on your way to some sort of permanent injury. Like whether you call it, a Morton's neuroma or whatever it's going to be, you're on your way. I guarantee. I already know that for sure, based upon my unfortunate experiences with True. But basically, those are some red flags, and I'm like, okay, this is a problem. And that was solely caused by the stiffness of the boot. And then I got rid of those, went into True skates, and the True, although those were by far at that point the stiffest pair of skates I had owned. But the good thing is because of how True fits, it is a non-issue on that. And I did notice that there were some there was performance benefits to having that one-piece boot on the True skates. They, got most of the fit right, except for when they didn't, when they made the skates too short. But that's definitely a different story. So moving out of those, I decided to kind of throw in the towel and go back to retail Bauer because, I didn't seem to have any issues with those. But by the time I did that, the 2X Pro Vapor had just been released, and that boot didn't have enough volume anymore. There was, there's been also a trend, as kind of a side note, there's been a reduction of volume in skates over the years. They're trying to get rid of quote-unquote negative space. And if you're someone that typically needs a little bit more volume in your skate like I do, and we're not talking width here, we're talking like foot depth, heel depth, instep height, that sort of thing, you are becoming an outlier to skate manufacturers. So it's more and more difficult for you to find a skate that fits you now, even with Bauer's new fit system of the Fit 1, 2, and 3. And so I used those for a while, and then I decided, you know what, these things don't fit me well, and moved on to the custom route. And so, that's not necessarily relevant for the boot stiffness part, but it wasn't until I got into the custom ultrasonics where I was like, okay, this is a stiffness that works for me. It was stiff near my foot, like the outsole, and it was softer up near the top so I could really get over the toes and flex and all that good stuff. And then, and I should also mention this, and I'm sorry I forgot this before I went with the custom vapors that I had. I did purchase a retail pair of AS3 Pros. And those skates, definitely some volume issues there. Again, there's less volume than there was on the previous versions of the CCM skates that I had owned. And they were way worse on the stiffness for me. They definitely had lace bite issues. They had pressure on the upper ankles. We're not flexing at all. Problems with that. So then that's when I fast forward and just went through the custom route. But anyways, getting back to the ultrasonic skate, that was a good balance of stiffer near the foot. And then a little softer upper, towards the top of the boot. Now, of course, there's some fit issues on that. You can look at my old other videos if you want to look at those. But what's going on with that? But that was a um, definite issue that I was like, okay, um, the ultrasonic was a good indicator of the right stiffness for me, and it is nowhere near the stiffest boot on the market. And so, kind of also comparing that to my wife's Jet Speed skates, the ultrasonics were a lot stiffer than, or excuse me, were a lot softer than that. And so now we start to talk about what is, like, where do these different skates that are currently on the market, where do they fall on the stiffness category? So now I'm going to roll in some images, and I'm also going to go from stiffest to softest with regard to the available top-end skates that you have at your disposal as of February of 2021. So here we go. All right, here we have the world champion of world's stiffest boot ever created by humans. This is the Ccm As3 Pro Supertacs. And just to give you a little bit of a heads up on how I'm rating these stiffnesses, this is just simply me going up to each one of these skates that I'll show in this video while in the store and giving them a squeeze at the top of the ankle, kind of those top two eyelets on both sides. I'll squeeze them there to kind of feel if I can tell a stiffness difference. So it's obviously not a perfect method, but you can at least get the sensation of, what is the stiffest versus what is the softest boot. And so, keep that in mind. That's just me. That's how I'm basically deciding which one is the stiffest versus softest. What I will say about that is if you go to the CCM website, there are some stiffness ratings on some of their models of skates. And I don't know why they don't do it on literally every pair, because that would be very helpful to kind of know the stiffness range. I think you have to dig around if you want to have it. I know it's out there. I've seen it before one other time. I just couldn't track it down for this video. But the retail model skate that CCM makes here, the As3 Pros, they have a stiffness rating of 215. And they're just kind of making that relative to their other skates. But that is by far the stiffest skate that CCM makes, and the stiffest boot, in my opinion, that is out there today. Getting into custom, you can do some different options with it. If you're a crazy person, you can go stiffer than this. But you can actually get this boot softer if you wanted to go custom. But that is definitely a different story. This is probably more geared toward the retail folks that are interested in getting this stuff. But anyways, these are the stiffest, and that is how I rated them, just by squeezing up in those two upper eyelets there. So let's move into the next one. Okay, next on the list is the Custom True. What I'll say about this, kind of squeezing the top of the boot on these, as well as the retail versions, the TF9s, they do feel equally as stiff. So the custom versus the retail variants do feel equally as stiff. I can tell you from the pair that I owned the previous generation of these skates, and I would have considered them to be as stiff. So basically the previous generation were equally as stiff as this one that you're looking at right now. I would still say these feel ever so slightly softer than the As3 Pros, but they could be on par for how stiff they are. Now, the good thing about True on how they fit skates, especially the custom ones, since it's basically going to be a perfect fit of the sides and top of your foot, it's going to wrap the top of your foot better. And I have tried on the retail model TF9s, and if you're somebody like me who has some volume issues for the heel depth, you would have a lot of pain on the upper ankle of the Trues as well, the retail model. So these, I think that the takeaway message on these really stiff boots is that they better fit you perfect, or you're going to have some problems most likely. So from a stiffness standpoint, I would say that though they're pretty on par with previous generations as well as the Supertac, but I did feel like these shoes were slightly softer than the AS3 for what that's worth. Next on the list, we have the Ccm Ft2 Jet Speed, and just to kind of give you a little bit of a comparison between the AS3 Pros and these skates. So as I said, the AS3 Pros have a stiffness rating of 215. These Jet Speeds have a stiffness rating of 195. So there is a softness, there is a little bit more flexibility to these than the Supertacs. I would actually go so far as to say that is a fairly noticeable stiffness difference. So this particular skate is getting into the more reasonable stiffness category, in my opinion, and also maintaining that one-piece boot design, which, by the way, I do think that one-piece boot design is a superior method. I can tell a difference for sure. The ultrasonic, I think, is the only one that I've ever skated in that comes close to as responsive as these, but it's, I guess, a different topic. But yeah, so these are still, I would still consider these to be softer than the True, in my humble opinion. But there is something about these skates that I want to point out, because I didn't notice this until after I grabbed this picture and put it in here. But I think it represents something that's a pretty telling example of somebody who is in a skate that maybe is too stiff for them. And we'll see if you can pick up on it. But it's something that I see on a frequent basis, and it's usually associated with people who have pretty stiff skates that they're wearing that maybe that stiffness isn't right for them. Let's put it that way. So let's move into that. Okay, if you notice that this person is not using their upper eyelet, then you have won the gold star. So yes, I know that people are going to argue that they either need room for their shin pads if they wear it under their tongue, or they really want that forward flexion to bend the knee over the toe. Yeah, I get that. But there are also different ways that you can lace your skates in order to provide that flexibility and maintain that stability, just by creating that upper loop that I should probably make a video on that at some point. But this is a very good indicator of somebody who wants to bend their knee over their toe, but they won't be able to do that as effectively without letting that, without lacing their skate up and not using that upper eyelet. I know a lot of people that do this, and I totally understand why they're doing it. And I understand there's more than just a stiffness reason for it, but my understanding is, like, when somebody can't get their boot to flex with them, they are going to omit that upper eyelet. So that is something that I've noticed and thought I'd share it with you. If you're somebody that's doing this with your skates, you might ask yourself, are these skates too stiff for me? Why am I doing this? And there's other ways you can lace your boots up. Then also the other thing is too, like, do you profile the steel on your skates? Do you know what that is? Maybe some people aren't aware. I would bet that there's a lot of people that buy a pair of skates, they get them sharpened, and they go play. I don't know if people realize that you're kind of handicapping yourself if you don't actually profile, your steel and get something that allows you to and works with you based upon your skating style and how you were trained. So I just wanted to point this out because this is a key indicator, if you will, of some sort of issue going on, and I've mostly noticed it around skates that are too stiff. So with that said, let's get on to the next pair. Okay, so Has anybody noticed that I haven't shown any pairs of Bauer Skates yet? Question mark. Yep, that is for a reason. I will get to that. But before I do that, I wanted to pull up this pair of skates. This is the Ccm As3 Supertac. So this is one model down from the As3 Pros. And when it comes to the stiffness rating, CCM says these are rated at a 190. And in my opinion, these were a very pleasant flexing boot. And I could tell that it still maintained the rigidity that you would want with a one-piece boot to get that responsiveness out of it. But it also seems to enable you to lace the skates all the way up and still maintain that forward flexion that you want. And so I was very intrigued by that stiffness level on that skate. And and the fit is the same, in case you were wondering. So I think that I don't know all of the differences between the As3 and the As3 Pro. I mean, one obvious one is the steel, but you know, there might be some other benefits of the As3 Pro that maybe I'm not thinking of right off the bat here. But from a stiffness standpoint, these are a little softer than the Ft2 Jet Speeds, and these were kind of, in my mind, as a good balance of rigidity and flexibility. So I just wanted to toss that one out there, even though this is the only non-top of the line model skate on this list. Oh, here we go. We're finally at the Bauer Skates, and I don't know if anybody's surprised to see this, but it's not the Vapor. That is the, you know, it turns out it's the Supreme. That's a stiffer skate. Bauer has been a little bit, it's been a little confusing to me about how they're rating their stiffness is. I've been given information that says that a Vapor is stiffer, or that, and also that an ultrasonic is stiffer. You know, I personally have felt that now that I've owned both pairs, that the ultrasonic is stiffer. In fact, what I would say is that the ultrasonic and that previous pair of AS3s, I would say that they are about the same stiffness level. And what I'll tell you about this particular skate, I think that the ultrasonics, I haven't seen a whole lot of real positive reviews about them. I know they sell, but I would say that these are some of the best performing skates with regard to like the gamut of skating styles. So I think that they market them as a power skate, good north-south skaters. But in my experience, with the right profile on them, like the Superior profile is the one I use. These are every bit these are way more agile than the Vapors, in my opinion. But these, I think, also benefit from the outsole. You can kind of see that they're doing some sort of bootleg one-piece design where it comes up in the heel. That actually adds a lot of rigidity and stiffness where you want it for the transferring your weight and all that good stuff. But it also allows the upper portion of the boot to be a bit softer, enabling you to really get over on your toes, as well as the eyelet pattern is more of a sloped design versus more of a right angle aggressive one that you'd see on some of the CCMs or the Vapors. And so that really lends itself to agility and power. So I thought it was a really good balance from a performance standpoint. I mean, fitting me in particular, that's a different story. But regarding stiffnesses, these are about on par with the Ccm As3, except for the bottom part of the boot, which could potentially be a little stiffer, but no way to measure that. Anyways, next skate. All right, you guys knew it was coming, the Vapors 2X Pros. This is, gosh, is this the most popular skate? It could be. I don't know if it is or not, but I sure see, I feel like I see a lot more Bauer Vapors than any other skate around. You know, whether it be me watching hockey on TV or just the games that I'm reffing, I feel like these are out there more, which makes me wonder if the majority of hockey players assuming they're in the correct skate and correct fit, do they just have a really low volume, thin, narrow foot? I don't know, but these are the fit on these are weird. And I know that fit isn't the topic of this particular video, but they're very soft up top. They don't wrap because of the injected eyelets. I will never get those injected eyelets again. It's going to be traditional eyelets forever. But, the bottom of the skate is, I guess we could call it fairly rigid, but not nearly as rigid as the ultrasonic. And the upper part of the boot is what I would consider to be very soft to a fault. So these particular skates, I've always experienced what I'll refer to as the speed wobbles. And that's basically just, there's no support, they don't wrap. And, they also kind of flare out at the top. So they're just a soft boot. And maybe this is good for somebody who is an agile player, but I didn't experience these to be fast or agile. And I don't know if that's exactly because of the softness. I'm going to guess that's more of a boot wrap, how it wraps the foot, and that kind of thing. But that is, I would consider that to be one of the softest skates that are out there today, at least through the top of the boot. So it's not the entirety of the boot, it's mostly just at the top of the boot. So when you take that into consideration, this seems like a really good skate for somebody who might be a little bit lighter weight. I definitely wouldn't recommend this for this particular skate for somebody who's like over 200 pounds unless they're really a perfect fit in these and know exactly what they're doing from a skating standpoint. But that's just my 2 cents, and you can take that for what you will. Okay, on to the last pair of skates. All right, here we are, the underdog. Last but not least, this is the skate that none of you like. And you don't know why you don't like it, because you've never seen one in a store, probably. This is the 80K Ribcore. This is probably one of the best skates that has been made, in my opinion. I know that CCM doesn't sell these very well. I know that most players in the NHL don't wear them, and that's why I think there's probably a lot of, I think that's probably why we see a lot more Vapors and Supremes and other CCMs being sold, but it's also a 2-piece boot. It's not a 1-piece like CCM's other offerings, and it'll stay that way until the 100Ks come out later on in 2021. But this particular boot design is rated has a stiffness rating of 185, and that is a really, really good stiffness rating for agility. So what people, I've kind of gotten the impression from talking to a bunch of people about these skates that they just don't think that they're going to be stiff enough or fast enough or agile enough to do what they want to do. I would say that these skates definitely lend themselves more to agility than they will for speed. I definitely can skate faster in the AS3 Pros or Ultrasonics than I can in these. This boot, you can see on the side it says Flex Frame. What's really going on, these are actually kind of a weird fitting boot. Like when you buy them, they are going to fit like a really narrow heel, fairly narrow in the forefoot, but strangely they have a little bit more volume from like the heel depth volume than the AS3 Pros do. So, but and that I think turns a lot of people off. And plus, there's a lot of people that are trying to sell these in stores that have no idea how they fit. And I bring this up because what'll happen is when they start off like just fitting the way I said they did, but when you heat them up, if you have a wider heel, wider forefoot, higher volume like I do, all of a sudden they just take that shape, unlike any other boot on the market. It's crazy, and they're really a great boot. And I wish you know, people saw that because there's nothing wrong with them at all. Very comfortable. They're easily one of the most comfortable boots that you can buy out of the just right out of the box at the retail level. But from a stiffness rating, going back to that, the cool part about these and what they mean by flex frame, I always thought flex frame was kind of referring to like how they fit, but it's really not. It's kind of basically saying that the lower portion of the boot is like stiffer and more rigid, and then gets softer through the upper part of the boot, which is not unlike the Ultrasonic, by the way. I think this was just kind of the first skate that was doing it, like the, you know, going back the 70Ks and that. But this boot is probably, in my opinion, like the bottom of the line regarding like how soft I personally would want to go, being 250 pounds or 15 pounds, 250 pounds. But at the same time, it's a great flex. The boot flexes in a great manner for agility, and it won't cause those hot spots when you try to, you know, be that agile player. These are a skate that I would highly recommend to pretty much anybody. You know, even that heavier player, and you can, again, even at the custom level, if you did want to go that way, and you're like, well, I like the idea of those skates, but 185 is like, I don't know if that's going to be stiff enough for me. You can actually ask for them to be stiffer, so you can actually increase the stiffness of them if you wanted to. So it is an option. But you know, I still think that, you know, these are, again, my opinions on how, like, from the stiffest to the softest boot. Notice I didn't really say anything was bad. I think the Vapors are probably my least favorite of all these skates on the list. The CCMs, I think, are just the softest, not the worst skate, just the softest. That's all we're talking about. I think that these particular rib cores probably rank up, you know, I think that if they were a one-piece boot, they could probably become CCM's best skate, better than the As3 Pros, Jet Speed, whatever. But, you know, two-piece, I think that, plus the fact that they're not really very many places to try on, I think that makes them not sell very well. And in fact, I think you can only get them by special order in a lot of places. But anyways, so those are the skates in order from stiffest to softest, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section, and see if you guys agree or disagree. But hopefully that at least shed some light upon the stiffness ratings of these different skates. And I think the main takeaway from this entire video is boot stiffness is not only applicable to lending itself to helping you perform better, but if you're not smart about what you choose, it is possible to choose a boot that's too stiff and actually hurt yourself. And that's obviously not what you want to do. So that about wraps it up. So next time you're out skate shopping, take a look at the skates and make sure you don't fall for the hype and you just buy the skates that are right for you and not too stiff and not too soft. Hopefully you like this video, guys, and if you have any questions or comments, definitely leave them. And we'll be back with you soon. Peace.